Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly into a wooden house in the middle of feudal Japan, where the morning air is cool enough to sting your nose, and the paper-thin walls do almost nothing to keep in the warmth you wish you had. You blink awake on a stiff woven mat, the kind that leaves little grid marks on your cheek, and before you even sit up, you already know the day has expectations waiting for you. No snooze button, no 5 more minutes. And honestly, you probably won't survive this life with your sanity intact, but hey, that's why we're just visiting. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening right now, drop your location and what time it is for you. I love seeing how far this sleepy little community stretches around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're lying there, half wrapped in a faded cotton blanket, listening to the faintest creak of wooden beams settling overhead. The house itself isn't much, just simple architectural lines, thin sliding doors, and floors that somehow always manage to be cold. You sit up slowly, already feeling the stiffness of sleeping without a real pillow. Your room isn't even a room, really. Just a space divided by shoji screens that might as well be tracing paper for how much privacy they offer. One cough from across the house, and you might as well have heard it right beside your ear. The sun hasn't climbed above the horizon yet, but enough grey light seeps in from the cracks to reveal the dust floating in the air. It drifts lazily, like even the dust is still waking up. You rub your arms, wishing for warmth, but you know that in feudal Japan, firewood doesn't exactly grow on, well, it does grow on trees, but that doesn't mean it's easy to get. Cutting wood is labour, carrying wood is labour. And using too much wood, that's an invitation for someone older than you to lecture you about frugality, honour, and the proper way to run a household. A phrase you could go your entire life without hearing again and be perfectly happy. You slide open the panel to step into the main space of the house. Everything is clean, simple, and practical, except for the decorative family altar in the corner, where a tiny incense curl smoulders down like a slow exhale. That altar is one of the rare spaces you're allowed to control, dusting it, tending to it, placing small offerings. But even then, you're not decorating it to your taste. You're honouring ancestors with a protocol that feels older than the mountains themselves. Historians still argue whether women in lower-class homes had more freedom in these rituals than elite samurai women, but either way, you perform them because they're simply what you do, what you've always done. Your feet shift across the wooden floor, the boards giving occasional polite squeaks. In this house, sound travels everywhere. Privacy is practically a myth, one you've heard of but never actually met. If someone whispers 2 rooms away, you hear it as if they whispered into your sleeve, which means anything you do, singing off-key, accidentally bumping a pot, closing a door too loudly, carries through the whole household. The expectations start early. Be quiet, be graceful, be aware. You slip outside into a cold morning that smells faintly of soil and smoke. The roof overhead is thatched, heavy with dew, and a tiny drip clings from one corner like it's debating whether to jump. A rooster somewhere screams like he's angry at you personally, which, yeah, probably accurate. The world is waking, but it's waking slowly, and you're already calculating everything you need to do before breakfast. One mainstream historical fact slips into your mind without ceremony. In many regions of feudal Japan, women were expected to manage the household by dawn, cooking, cleaning, organising tools, before most men even stretched their arms. You, standing there in the crisp morning air, are the engine that makes this little wooden world function. But there's also a quirky detail you might love. Some homes kept tiny wind bells on their porches, delicate metal chimes that rang not just for beauty, but for spiritual protection. Your family has one too. It's shaped like a tiny fish, and when the breeze stirs, it rings with a soft ting that feels like a miniature blessing. You glance over the yard, a small vegetable patch, a well that's always colder than expected, and a chicken coop that smells. Let's be honest, a little too awake for this hour. The light is turning the faintest shade of gold at the horizon, and you feel that mix of dread and determination rise inside you. This is your life. This is your morning. You step back inside. Someone else is stirring behind a paper wall, and you move with practiced silence so they don't have yet another reason to scold you. Your tasks await. Your entire day awaits. But right now, there's a stillness in the air that almost feels like a gift. Almost. But don't get too attached. Days like this rarely stay gentle for long. You move into the main room with the kind of quiet efficiency you've practiced since childhood. Because in this world, mornings aren't gentle, and they definitely aren't flexible. The fire in the small hearth has died down to ashy ghosts, so your first order of business is coaxing it back to life. You crouch down, breath clouding faintly in the cool air, and start rearranging the charcoal like you're conducting a tiny orchestra. It's early enough that your fingers feel numb, which doesn't help your coordination, but you soldier on anyway. That's the thing about feudal Japan. The day doesn't wait for you to feel comfortable. You strike flint, sparks leap, and the charcoal slowly catches, finally offering a faint warmth that crawls toward your hands like a shy cat. As the fire strengthens, shadows shiver along the paper walls. The sound of it, the little crackles, the low hum, forms the closest thing you get to music this early. No flutes, no shamisen, just fire being fire. Behind you, someone shifts on their tatami mat, and you wince. In this house, waking someone up too early is considered a sign that you lack refinement. It's not enough to get you yelled at, but you'll definitely hear a comment about being more mindful at some point. And by comment, you know they mean a 20-minute monologue delivered with the energy of a TED Talk and the warmth of a tax inspection. Your tasks start lining up in your mind like little wooden tiles. Sweep the entryway, heat water, prep rice, check the pickles, gather laundry, track the daily chores list, and probably patch something that tore yesterday. You move around the room, sweeping with soft strokes so the bristles barely whisper against the floor. The dust collects neatly, evidence of yesterday's work, and the day before that, and the week before that. Daily routines in feudal Japan were rigid, and much of a woman's labour happened before the rest of the family woke. That's your mainstream historical fact for this section. Households genuinely relied on these early morning tasks, especially in agricultural communities where every hour of daylight mattered. As you finish sweeping, you hear the first sign of life, a soft cough from your grandmother. She's awake. And with her comes the full set of morning expectations. You bow your head slightly when she slides the shoji open, even though your back aches from crouching so long. She nods slowly, approving your early start, but then her gaze flicks to your sweeping pattern and she raises an eyebrow because apparently your lines weren't straight enough. You resist the urge to roll your eyes so hard they travel to a neighbouring village. Still, you offer the polite good morning she expects. Even the tone matters. Too enthusiastic and you sound childish. Too flat and you sound disrespectful. There is no winning here, only managing. Next, you move to the kitchen area, where the rice pot waits like a stone drum. You wash the grains until the water turns from cloudy to clear, fingers numb once again. The rhythm is soothing if you let it be, though you know the moment you relax too much, you'll spill something and generate a new wave of scrutiny. You set the rice to cook and turn to the pickles, tsukemono you made weeks ago. You sniff one jar, then another, and they seem fine, though the one with the slightly odd smell makes you pause. Historians still argue whether women used obscure ingredients like offshore kelp or fermented flower buds for certain pickling methods. But your family recipe uses nothing that dramatic, just salt, vegetables and thyme doing the work for you. Still, you remember the quirky tidbit you once heard from an older neighbour that some families believed pickles absorbed gossip. Yes, gossip, meaning that eating the wrong pickle on the wrong day could somehow burden you with the weight of overheard secrets. That's not something the official history books care about, but the old folks in your village treat it like absolute truth. You quietly choose the jar least likely to drag you into metaphysical drama. The room brightens slowly as the day begins outside. Birds chirp with what you consider unnecessary enthusiasm. You stir miso into the warming pot and the steam rises in soft ribbons. The scent is earthy, comforting, and steadying. It's one of the few things in your routine that feels like a small kindness, something warm before the world gets noisy. Speaking of noisy, your little brother bursts from behind a screen with the delicacy of a rampaging boar, nearly knocking over a pot. Your grandmother clicks her tongue so sharply you swear clouds scatter outside. You shoot him a look, but not too harsh. You're supposed to be the calm older sister, the example. He sticks his tongue out before bowing dramatically to your grandmother, because even chaos in feudal Japan must come with protocol. The fire crackles louder now, spreading heat into the house. You check the water for tea, then pour it carefully. Every movement has rules. How you hold the ladle, how you place the cups, even how you breathe. quietly, regularly, as if announcing your presence is somehow inelegant. Mourning in feudal Japan isn't glamorous, and it definitely isn't peaceful, but it's structured in a way you've learned to navigate. It's the calm before the long day, the preparation that underpins everything else. And although you sometimes wish you could just not do all this, you know that skipping one task would ripple through the entire day like a stone thrown into still water. For now, you exhale, letting the warmth of the rising sun stretch across the floor. Breakfast isn't quite ready, but your morning expectations are already fully awake. You move toward the corner where your clothing is folded in a neat stack, each layer resting like a quiet reminder of the day's expectations. Dressing isn't a rushed scramble like in the modern world. It's a ritual, slow, deliberate, and oddly exhausting before you've even taken 3 steps outside. The air still clings to that early morning chill, so when you lift the first layer, your plain underrobe, you brace yourself for that moment when the fabric touches your skin. Cool, slightly scratchy, and heavier than you'd like. Layering in feudal Japan is an art form, and today, you're the canvas. You slip into the underrobe, smoothing the fabric with your palm so it lies flat. Because wrinkles are a sign of carelessness, and you absolutely do not have the emotional energy to deal with a lecture about carelessness before breakfast. Then comes the cassode, the basic robe, that everyone recognizes, simple but clean. You pull it around yourself, left side over right, the correct way, because right over left is only for the dead, and starting your day in funeral order is definitely a bad omen you don't need. A sash, then another layer, then a sturdier outer robe depending on the season. It's not glamorous kimono dressing. This isn't a courtly no performance. This is everyday practicality, a fabric puzzle designed to tell the world who you are without you saying a single word. And that's one mainstream historical fact. Women's clothing in feudal Japan often signaled social class, family values, and respectability more clearly than any spoken introduction. Your sleeves, your sash, the layering. All of it communicates your place in society before you even bow your head. As you tighten the obi, not too tight, or you'll faint halfway through chores but tight enough to keep everything from unraveling, you feel the familiar restriction settle in. Movement becomes measured, steps become smaller, breathing becomes, well, optional, apparently. And here's your first light joke of the section. The moment you finish tying the obi, you're reminded that whoever invented complicated clothing clearly never had to sprint across a yard to stop a chicken from escaping. Because let's be honest, this outfit was never designed with emergency poultry situations in mind. You run your fingers along the fabric, checking for loose threads, because even a single stray fibre can be judged as sloppiness. It's one of the things you'll never say out loud but always feel. Your clothing isn't just about looking presentable. It's about not giving anyone a reason to chastise you. But clothing also comes with its quirky touches. For instance, women often tucked small scent sachets, tiny fabric packets filled with herbs or crushed blossoms, into their sleeves to mask the smells of smoke, sweat, or fish markets. You have one too, tied with a faded red string. It carries the soft scent of plum blossoms and dried mint. When you move, it releases the faintest trace of fragrance, a little secret luxury in a world that doesn't hand out many luxuries at all. You notice yourself standing straighter as the layers settle. Clothing shapes posture. It shapes perception. It shapes the way you walk through your own home. You can't slouch. You can't flop into a chair. You can't casually lounge like someone in a modern hoodie and sweatpants binge-watching a show. You must glide, or at least try to glide. Some mornings you're more awkward duckling than graceful crane, but you do your best. As you adjust the back seam, you remember a story your aunt once told, a fringe detail that always made you laugh. She said some women used to believe that if you tied your sash in a perfect knot, spirits would admire your discipline and bless your household with calm weather. Historians still argue whether this was a genuine belief or just a clever way mothers pressured daughters into tying neat knots. But either way, you double-check that knot because you've seen enough unexpected rainstorms to hedge your bets. Finally, the outfit is in place. You smooth your sleeves once more, letting your fingers follow the edges as if sealing in your intentions for the day. You step back, assessing yourself in a reflective surface, a polished piece of metal that shows a faint, blurred version of your face. The image isn't sharp, but it's enough to remind you that in this era, mirrors are more philosophical educators than tools of vanity. They force you to accept yourself in soft focus. Honestly, probably healthier. You pull your hair back next, twisting it into a style that says, "I'm responsible and prepared," even though on the inside you feel more like, "I would like a nap, please." The pins slip in smoothly. Your fingers know this choreography by heart. Then comes the moment when you exhale, feeling the weight of everything you're now wearing: cloth, expectations, social meaning. You pick up the small hand towel you'll need for chores, tuck it neatly into your sleeve and step outside your tiny dressing area. Your outfit rustles faintly with each movement, a quiet soundtrack to the life you're expected to maintain. And as you take your first steps into the rest of the house, you're fully aware you're not just dressed for the day, you're dressed for your role. You move back into the main living space, your sleeves whispering against your sides as you walk, soft, deliberate, careful. Because in this household, hierarchy isn't something you occasionally think about. It's the air you breathe. Invisible, constant, absolute. It shapes where you stand, when you speak, how you move, and how loudly, or rather, how quietly you exist. Your grandmother is already settled near the family altar, sipping tea with that serene expression that somehow means, "I love you, but I'm judging everything you do." You offer a polite bow, not too deep, not too casual. The angle matters. Everything matters. She nods, and you're cleared to move on with your morning. Next, your mother emerges, adjusting her robe with the same grace you've been trying to imitate since you were 7. She gives you a small smile, warm but worn around the edges. Her day started even earlier than yours. That's one of the few comforting parts of this hierarchy. No matter how many responsibilities rest on your shoulders, someone older always seems to be carrying even more. The household hierarchy in feudal Japan is like a quiet choreography, one that dictates exactly how you behave. And here's your mainstream historical fact. Daughters were expected to show obedience not only to their parents, but also to older siblings and sometimes even distant relatives who outranked them within the family structure. There's no "I'll do it later," no negotiating chores, no "I'm not really feeling it today." Not unless you want a stern lecture about duty, harmony, and maintaining face within the community. And trust me, you don't. Your little brother darts through the room again, this time chasing a beetle with the enthusiasm of a warrior charging into battle. You give him a warning look, but in strict birth order logic, he technically doesn't have to listen to you. Being the younger son gives him a surprising level of immunity from responsibility, at least for now. The beetle scurries under a mat, and your brother flops on the floor dramatically as though he's suffered a tragic loss. Your grandmother exhales through her nose, loudly. Hierarchy has spoken. It's your job to pick him up off the floor and redirect him before the house is labelled chaotic. You kneel beside him, your robe pooling gracefully like a well-trained fabric pet, and whisper, "Go outside. Run. Somewhere far away." He perks up instantly and bolts out the door, sliding the shoji way too hard. The impact makes the whole wooden frame rattle. Somewhere you just know an ancestor sighed. Your grandmother glances at the door, then at you, and even though you weren't the one who did it, her expression suggests that your aura alone should have prevented such door abuse. You bow slightly, a silent apology for a sin you did not commit. Welcome to feudal Japan. You move to the storage area next, checking the baskets of rice, vegetables, and dried fish. Your mother joins you, and together you discuss the day's tasks, speaking softly to avoid waking the last sleeper in the house, your father. His role as head of the household grants him the privilege of sleeping a little longer. The final person to rise is usually the one with the final say in everything that matters. You and your mother arrange the tools for the day, but she does it with a subtle authority. She hands you the broom. You accept it with both hands, because passing objects improperly is considered disrespectful. Small gestures here carry enormous weight. You glance over the scattered chores list, mentally of course. Paper is too precious to waste on daily reminders. You know your responsibilities by heart. Sweep the walkway, check the firewood, prepare the midday meal, clean the water jar, tend the small garden, help mend clothing. It's a rotating schedule that changes just enough to keep you on your toes, but never enough to feel exciting. Here's a quirky tidbit for the section. In some households, the oldest woman would clap twice before assigning chores, believing the sound scared off mischievous household spirits who like to hide tools. Your grandmother does this sometimes, usually on days when the weather feels untrustworthy, which is somehow a meteorological category in her personal system. This morning, she doesn't clap, which means the spirits are presumably behaving, for now. As you carefully roll up your sleeves, just enough for chores, not enough to appear sloppy, your mother gives you a knowing look. Remember, she says softly, move with care. This is her polite way of saying, don't drop anything today. Don't spill anything today. Don't give your grandmother or the neighbours or the spirits or the local gossip fuel for a story. You nod. That's the thing about hierarchy. It teaches you to read entire paragraphs in a single sentence. Your father finally emerges, straightening his robe and stretching his arms like someone who has never once worried about a charcoal fire going out overnight. You bow again, deeper this time, as does your mother. His nod is brief. If you were a modern teenager, you'd call it barely acknowledging your existence. But here, it's a perfectly acceptable morning greeting. He takes his place at the low table. The seating arrangement follows a simple rule. Important people sit where the draft is weakest. You sit closer to the cold edge of the room, not by punishment, but by tradition. It's just how the layers of family unfold. As everyone gathers, you move around with the calmness expected of you, placing bowls and chopsticks without clattering. The sound of clattering chopsticks is considered unrefined, and you have no plans to be known as unrefined before the sun is fully up. One last element of hierarchy slips in: serving order. Elders first, men next, children next, yourself last. It's such a normal routine that you don't think of it as unfair, just as the rhythm of life. Still, when you finally sit down, your legs tucked neatly beneath you, you can't help but allow a tiny internal sigh. Not too big, not visible. Just enough to quietly remind yourself that surviving this household hierarchy deserves at least a small moment of internal applause. You lift your bowl, bow your head slightly, and breakfast officially begins. Hierarchy or not, a warm meal is still a warm meal. You lift your bowl of steaming miso soup and let the warmth drift toward your face, easing a bit of the morning tension from your shoulders. Breakfast isn't extravagant. Rice, pickles, broth, maybe a sliver of dried fish if the household budget is forgiving this week. But it's steady, predictable, grounding. In feudal Japan, meals aren't just food. They're a continuation of etiquette, silence, and the invisible web of rules that govern your every gesture. You take your first bite in a way that feels almost rehearsed because, well, it is. You've been learning proper dining posture since before you could pronounce half the ingredients in your bowl. Knees tucked, back straight, elbows nowhere near the table. Your grandmother watches like a hawk, skilled in the ancient martial art of critiquing gently but relentlessly. She doesn't even need to speak. Her eyebrows alone could discipline a small militia. Your father slurps his soup loudly, a sign of appreciation. Tea? Slurp. Noodles? Slurp. It's not rude, it's an audible compliment. Meanwhile, if you made a noise even 1 decibel louder than a polite hum, someone would call attention to your lack of refinement. Funny how rules change depending on who's holding the chopsticks. You place your rice bowl down lightly, not silent, but respectful, and immediately check your chopstick placement. A mainstream historical fact slides in here. Placing chopsticks upright in a bowl is considered deeply taboo because it resembles funeral offerings. Even children learn this from an early age. You once made that mistake at age 5 and triggered enough gas to qualify as a dramatic stage performance. Now, properly trained, your chopsticks rest parallel across the bowl's rim. Safe, respectful, approved by ancestors. Your little brother, of course, pays no attention to any of this. He's drumming on the table with his chopsticks like he's auditioning to be feudal Japan's first rock star. Your grandmother clears her throat sharply. The sound slices through the air like a blade. He freezes mid-drum roll, eyes wide, chopsticks suspended mid-air. Then he lowers them slowly, placing them properly with the fear and precision of someone who has seen consequences. You hide your smile behind your teacup. As breakfast continues, conversation stays minimal. Silence is expected. Too much talking is a sign of poor discipline, and heaven forbid you talk with food in your mouth. You'd get a lecture so long it could be serialized. Anyone who imagines feudal Japanese meals as cheerful group gatherings full of laughter has definitely confused history with a modern dinner commercial. But despite the silence, You feel something warm, familiar, maybe even comforting. The collective breathing, the quiet tap of ceramic, the soft rustle of robes, the shared understanding that this simple meal ties the household together before everyone scatters into duties. Then comes a quirky tidbit your grandmother sometimes mutters under her breath. She claims certain bowls prefer certain family members. Should she witness someone reaching for the wrong one, she'll whisper, "That bowl belongs to your uncle's temperament. It will sour your day if you use it." Historians would laugh, but in this house, arguing with her is like arguing with the moon. Pointless and vaguely disrespectful. And yet, some part of you avoids that particular bowl anyway, just in case. As you finish the last of your rice, your father offers a rare comment. Good texture. It's the closest thing he will give to praise today, maybe this week. You accept the compliment with a small bow, leaving the appropriate pause afterward, just long enough to honour the words, not long enough to seem dramatic. Your mother and grandmother finish next, folding their hands neatly before setting their bowls aside. You wait for the elders to rise before you do, because the hierarchy extends even to the simple sequence of standing up. When they shift, you shift. When they move, you move. Finally, the table is cleared, and you're responsible for washing and drying the dishes. You bring everything to the washing basin, heating water again because cold water is, well, cold, and you're not trying to freeze your hands before the day has even started. As you scrub, you notice the tiny imperfections in the bowls. Nicks, faded paint, tiny hairline cracks that haven't grown yet but will someday. Each piece of dishware has its own history, its own story of hundreds of meals, small arguments, quiet laughter, and mornings like this. Historians still argue whether lower-class families owned multiple sets of bowls or relied on just a few treasured pieces repaired countless times with natural resins. What you know from lived experience is this. Dropping even one bowl is unthinkable. Not because you'd get punished harshly, but because the household supplies are precious. Every object must last. Everything is cared for. Everything matters. As you rinse the last bowl, sunlight filters through the paper wall in a soft, milky glow. Breakfast is done. The silence breaks. The day officially begins. You dry your hands, tuck your sleeves back into place, and step into the next stretch of your life, where every gesture, every glance, every mistake, and every moment of grace will ripple through the household. Meals may be quiet here, but the rules surrounding them speak louder than any words. You step out into the courtyard to dump the dishwater, and the moment the cool breeze hits your face, another layer of daily reality settles in. Your future isn't really yours to shape. Not in this world. Not in this era. Marriage, the thing modern people like to romanticize, isn't a love story waiting to unfold, but more like an appointment you didn't schedule and can't cancel. It's a duty, a transaction, a family strategy, and you're one piece on a very large board. As you pour the water out, it splashes against the packed earth and sends tiny droplets onto your ankles. You wipe them off absently and glance toward the neighbor's home. Their daughter is a year older than you, already married, already moved out, already responsible for another household's expectations. You remember attending her wedding, beautiful robes, lacquered boxes, formal bows. But behind it all, she had that faraway look in her eyes, like she wasn't quite inhabiting her own body. You understood even then. Your grandmother calls you back inside to help sort fabrics. As you walk, the shoji slides back with a soft whisper, and she hands you a pile of cloth, kimono sleeves, half-mended sashes, faded garments that need repurposing. Her expression is serious, which is how you know she's about to lecture you, again. There is talk, she begins, without any dramatic build-up. Families considering alliances. You don't look up from the fabric. If you do, she'll interpret it as eagerness, and heaven forbid you appear eager about marriage. That would be unseemly. You inspect a sleeve for loose stitching and ask, "For which cousin?" Your grandmother gives you a look so sharp you nearly drop the fabric. Not for your cousin, for you. Of course, for you. You keep your face neutral, but inside your stomach sinks a little. Or a lot. Hard to tell. Marriage in feudal Japan often wasn't about personal feelings. It was about household stability, land ties, managing resources, and strengthening social or political bonds. That's your mainstream historical fact. Marriages were arranged to maintain harmony and economic survival, not to chase affection. Your mother overhears the conversation and steps closer, smoothing your shoulder gently. Nothing is decided, she says. Only discussions. You nod, because what else can you do? In this world, your choice is more like a polite suggestion that no one seriously considers. You feel like a boat tethered to a dock, drifting just enough to feel the water, but never enough to actually float away. Your grandmother folds a sash and continues. A woman must bring harmony to her husband's household. That is her duty. She says this with the certainty of someone stating the colour of the sky. It isn't meant to be intimidating, just factual, normal, expected. Then comes a quirky tidbit that's floated through your village for years. Some families believe that when a girl is born, her temperament is shaped by the first animal that cries outside the house that day. A crow means she'll be stubborn. A sparrow means gentle. A dog means loyal. A rooster means loud. Your mother swears a crane cried the morning you were born, which she insists is a sign of grace and good fortune. Your grandmother insists it was a crow, and that explains everything. You're not sure who's right, but either way, neither animal will save you from arranged marriage. Later, while gathering laundry, you overhear your father speaking with a visiting neighbour. Their voices drift through the paper walls like everything else does. Hidden conversations don't stay hidden for long in a house made of wood and hope. Good family. Steady income. Daughter is obedient. Yes, my daughter works hard, knows household tasks. Suitable age. You stop folding for a moment, heart thudding. They're talking about you. Not directly, but close enough. You pretend not to listen, though your ears betray you by catching every syllable. Historians still argue whether young women in lower classes felt more freedom in selecting partners compared to elite samurai families. Some accounts suggest they could influence the decision subtly. Others claim choices were entirely parental. But standing here with laundry in your arms, you know exactly how limited your influence really is. You finish folding, take a steadying breath, and bring the bundle outside to dry. The sun is rising higher now, warming the courtyard. You hang each garment with slow, methodical care, letting the sunlight paint the fabric with gold. The robes flutter lightly in the breeze, free in a way you are not. Still, you find small rebellion in tiny things, a slightly looser knot on your sash. Waiting an extra moment before answering a call, pausing to admire a butterfly landing on a cabbage leaf. These aren't revolutions, but they are yours. When you return inside, your mother meets your eyes and offers a look filled with quiet sympathy. She knows, she lived this, she survived it, and maybe, in her own way, she's trying to help you survive it too. She whispers, "You'll bring your own harmony, in your own way." It's a statement, not a consolation. A reminder that even within rigid expectations, women find ways to shape their world. Subtly, patiently, cleverly. You nod, placing the folded fabrics neatly into the chest. Marriage may not be your choice, but the person you become within it. That part, at least, you can try to claim. You step outside again to shake out a woven mat, letting the dust drift away like tiny drifting ghosts, and your mind drifts with it, to motherhood, that looming expectation hovering somewhere in your near or distant future. In feudal Japan, being a woman means that motherhood isn't just possible, it's assumed. The way the sunrise follows the night, the way rice follows rain. People talk about it casually, as if parenting is as automatic as breathing, though breathing doesn't require nearly as many sleepless nights or household gossip risks. The mat snaps in your hands, releasing a little cloud of dust that sparkles in the sunlight before settling. You cough softly, covering your mouth with your sleeve the way your mother taught you. Not doing so would be considered uncouth, and besides, someone would definitely comment on it. Inside, you hear your mother humming while tending to the kitchen fire. It's a soothing sound, steady, warm, a quiet affirmation that she'll make it through another day. But her humming also reminds you of how much she shoulders. For years, she's balanced childcare, chores, social protocol, and that constant emotional tightrope of keeping everyone in harmony. And that's your mainstream historical fact. In feudal Japan, motherhood came with immense pressure, especially because a woman's social value often depended on producing children, preferably sons. But here's the twist. The part people rarely talk about. Daughters mattered too. Not because they could inherit land or lead households, but because they kept traditions alive, managed daily work, helped aging parents, and upheld the invisible cultural threads that held communities together. A daughter was both worker and peacekeeper, woven into every corner of family life. You carry the mat back inside and lay it neatly on the floor. Your grandmother is nearby, sipping tea and eyeing you as though she can sense you thinking too loudly about the future. She gestures for you to sit. You comply. This usually means she's in one of her passing down wisdom whether you asked or not moods. When you become a mother, she begins, as if starting a sentence with if would be ridiculous. Your patience will be tested. You nod because everyone knows this. Babies cry, toddlers run into things head first, children ask questions like, why is rice white, and somehow expect a philosophical answer. But your grandmother isn't talking about the cute kind of patience. Children must learn discipline, she continues. You will guide them with a calm mind. You resist the urge to laugh. Calm mind? You? The girl who nearly snapped at a chicken earlier for looking at you funny. Still, you keep your face serene, the way you've practiced. Your grandmother leans closer and lowers her voice, as though sharing ancient wisdom passed through the ages. You must also ignore the neighbours. They always have opinions. Too many opinions. You bite your lip to avoid smiling. She's not wrong. There's a quirky tidbit that floats around the village. People say if a baby laughs during its sleep, it's because a fox spirit is playing with it. This is either charming or horrifying, depending on how superstitious you are and whether you're currently holding the baby. Some mothers shake the child gently to shoo the fox away, while others consider it a blessing. You personally haven't decided which interpretation comforts you more. Your mother calls you outside to help tend the vegetable patch. The sun is higher now, warming the earth and your sleeves as you kneel beside the leafy greens. You pull a few weeds, careful not to disturb the thin roots. Children often crawl here, learning to walk between rows of vegetables. Your mother smiles as she watches you work. You'll be a good mother someday, she says kindly. You lift an eyebrow. You say that because I'm good at weeding? She laughs softly. Weeding teaches patience. Patience teaches motherhood. You're not entirely convinced, but you let her have her poetic metaphor. Gardening does teach discipline, though. The slow kind. The kind where you don't see results for weeks. Maybe motherhood is similar. Small daily actions that eventually grow into something meaningful. As you gather greens into your basket, you imagine raising a child in a house like this, guiding them through rituals, teaching them respect, showing them how to move with grace, reminding them not to run into walls even though you did exactly that as a child. You picture a tiny hand grabbing your robe, tugging until you bend down to listen. The image fills you with something like tenderness, but also something like fear. Because motherhood isn't just about nurturing, it's responsibility, enormous responsibility. Historians still argue whether feudal Japanese mothers were harsher or gentler than the fathers. Some say women were more emotionally available. Others claim they enforced rules even more strictly. But standing here in the garden, watching your mother move with quiet strength, you understand that the answer isn't simple. Women had to be both soft and strong, gentle enough to soothe, firm enough to guide, and resilient enough to carry the silent weight of expectations that followed them from dawn to dusk. A butterfly flutters past, landing briefly on your hand before drifting away. You smile. Maybe it means something. Maybe it doesn't. But in this world of rituals and superstition, signs find meaning whether you look for them or not. Your mother stands and brushes dirt from her knees. Come, she says. There is laundry to bring in. You rise carefully, adjusting your sleeves. Your future, marriage, children, motherhood, feels closer today than it did yesterday. Still uncertain, still shaped by others, but no longer something you can push from your mind. You walk back toward the house, basket in hand, the soft rustling of your robes blending with the breeze. Motherhood may be an expectation, but the kind of mother you become, gentle, patient, fierce, or quietly rebellious, might just be your first real choice. You carry the basket of greens back inside, your sleeves brushing softly against your sides, and just as you set it down, your mother asks you to fetch the spindle from the storage alcove. That single request shifts your entire morning rhythm, because now you're stepping into one of the most overlooked but utterly essential dimensions of a woman's life in feudal Japan. Work. Work inside the home. Work outside the home. Work that no one praises. Work that quietly holds the entire household together like invisible thread. You slide open the storage door, rummaging past baskets, tools, and a suspiciously large jar of pickled radish. until your fingers close around the spindle, smooth wood worn down by years of turning. The spindle itself is humble, but in this world it's practically an extension of your hand. Weaving, spinning, mending, these tasks aren't side chores, they're survival. Clothing doesn't magically appear from markets like in modern times. It grows from your labour, literally. Stepping back into the main room, you settle onto a wooden stool. Your mother hands you a bundle of raw fibre, and you begin twisting it with a steady rhythm, turning it into usable thread. The motion is repetitive but almost meditative. Twist, pull, guide, breathe. The spindle hums slightly as it spins, bobbing in your fingers like a tiny wooden dancer. A mainstream historical fact fits neatly here. Women did the bulk of textile production in feudal Japan, spinning thread, weaving cloth, dyeing fabrics, and repairing garments. Their work wasn't just household maintenance, it was economic contribution. A family's status could rise or fall based on the quality of its textiles, and because merchants prized fine work, skilled women sometimes had more influence than anyone admitted openly. Your spindle catches slightly, jolting in your grasp. You mutter under your breath, something along the lines of "cooperate, please," because even tools seem to have moods. You smooth the fibres, coaxing them back into line. Anyone watching from the future might think weaving is peaceful cottagecore bliss, but your arms say otherwise. Your grandmother walks by, appraising your work with an approving grunt. Rare praise, like seeing a shooting star, or a chicken behaving itself for once. You hold back a smile. Soon enough, your tasks expand. You help your mother patch a torn sleeve, tiny stitches so neat they're barely visible. You sweep stray fibres from the floor because leaving them around is considered disorderly. You move to the outdoor area to start rinsing a set of dyed cloths. You hang them carefully on a bamboo pole, not letting them overlap, because uneven drying means blotchy colour, and blotchy colour means shame. Shame is a big deal here. Enough shame and the neighbours start whispering. And if they're whispering, your grandmother hears it somehow like a human gossip antenna. Once the cloths are drying, you help your mother crush dried herbs for household remedies and insect repellents. The scent of mugwort rises into the air, earthy, sharp, calming in its own wild way. You tap the mortar gently, feeling a small puff of greenish dust float upward, and sneeze before you can stop yourself. Your mother laughs. The herbs approve of you today, you rub your nose. Could have shown approval more politely. A quirky tidbit drifts into your mind. Some women carried tiny packets of ground herbs not just for medicine but for deodorizing work clothes. Farmers' wives especially liked using aromatic rice powder scented with chrysanthemum. You once tried a pinch of it just to experiment and ended up smelling like a polite festival float for half a day. You head to the small field behind the house to help with the seasonal work. The soil is warm under your knees as you crouch down, rearranging rows of seedlings that grew unevenly in the night. A beetle crawls by, shiny and determined, and you momentarily debate whether letting it stay counts as being gentle or allowing pest sabotage. You move it aside onto a stone. No need to declare war on the insect kingdom today. Historians still argue whether women in rural areas had more autonomy due to their physical labour contributions. Some claim their economic value gave them informal negotiation power within families. Others insist the patriarchy remained just as firm regardless of work. As you lean over the field, sun warming your back, you suspect both are right. Labour gives you respect, but not necessarily choice. Your mother calls for help near the water jar. The rope is tangled again, somehow tangled in ways that defy physics. You kneel beside her, trying to undo the knot. It's stubborn, ridiculous, possibly malevolent. After 5 minutes of struggling, you manage to free it, and your mother pats your shoulder proudly. Then, as you lift the heavy jar ladle to pour water into a basin, some spills onto your sleeve. You freeze, not because spilling water is catastrophic, but because that sleeve was just dried. Your mother laughs and shakes her head. Better water than miso, she says. Miso stays forever. You return indoors to help with grinding rice flour next. The stone mortar turns with slow, deliberate heaviness. Your arms begin to ache, but you keep going. Work after work, task after task. Feudal Japanese life doesn't give you breaks. It gives you momentum. You ride that momentum like someone balancing on a bamboo pole, wobbling, adjusting, but moving forward somehow. You pause briefly, stretching your fingers. The spindle rests against the wall, Cloth rustles on the drying line outside, the herbal dust lingers in the air. These aren't glamorous tasks, but they're the threads that bind the day, together. You might never get praised dramatically for this work, but without it, the household would crumble instantly. And even though the labour is constant, some part of you finds comfort in its rhythm. In the quiet hum of productivity, in the small victories, untangling a knot, repairing a tear, finishing a skein of thread evenly. This is your world, practical, demanding, busy, and strangely meaningful. You place the finished bundle of thread beside your mother and wipe your hands clean. Work continues, always, but at least for now you've earned a brief breath. You carry the last bundle of dried cloth inside, place it neatly in the corner, and then step toward the doorway where the sunlight spills across the threshold like a soft welcome. It's time to head into the village. A small journey, barely a walk down the hill, but still one of the few moments in your day where the world feels larger than your home's thin paper walls. You slide the shoji open carefully, tuck your sleeves, and step outside into crisp air that smells faintly of cedar and earth. The path to the village is narrow, lined with stones and packed earth, worn smooth by generations of footsteps. Your wooden sandals clack lightly as you walk, never loudly, because loud footsteps signal carelessness, and you don't need another critique added to your lifetime collection. You adjust the basket on your arm, filled with the cloth you and your mother will trade later for salt or bowl repairs. The village comes into view gradually. Low wooden houses with thatched roofs, smoke trailing lazily from chimneys, and a handful of villagers already beginning their daily bustle. Dogs wander around with the freedom of local nobility, tail wagging their way into anyone's good graces. Chickens dart across pathways like tiny feathery thieves, looking suspicious even when they've stolen nothing. As you walk, you feel eyes on you, not in a sinister way, just the ordinary way small communities operate. People notice everything. Who's wearing what? Who's carrying what? Who looks tired? Who looks cheerful? Who's walking alone? Who isn't? In a village this size, the phrase "everyone knows everyone" isn't an exaggeration. It's a warning. One mainstream historical fact floats through your mind. Feudal Japanese villages were tightly knit social ecosystems where reputation mattered almost as much as harvest yields. A woman's behaviour outside the household could influence how her entire family was perceived. If you tripped on the path, people noticed. If you argued loudly, people remembered. If you laughed too freely, someone, somewhere, would interpret it as a moral commentary. You keep your posture composed, not stiff, but appropriately modest, as your mother taught you. Walk like water, she'd say, calm and steady. Which is poetic, but honestly some days you feel more like a puddle. A neighbour, old Mrs. Takamori, calls out to you from her porch. "Good. Morning, child. Off to trade again?" You bow politely. "Yes, Mum. Just some cloth we finished yesterday." She smiles, eyes bright with the kind of nosiness that could fuel an entire anthology. "Your sewing has improved. I could see the stitches last season. Now I can't." You're not sure if that's a compliment or if she's admitting she needs stronger glasses, but you accept it gracefully. "Thank you." As you continue down the path, you notice someone repairing a roof, tapping wooden shingles into place. Two children chase each other around a tree while their mother tries to coax them toward chores with promises of sweet rice cakes later. You overhear snippets of conversation, weather predictions, gossip about whose cow wandered where, a debate about whether this year's harvest will be generous or stingy. Then comes the quirky tidbit of the day. An elderly fisherman standing near his shed swears loudly that last night he heard a kappa, a mythical river creature, splashing around by the water wheel. You pause for a moment, listening in amusement. He describes the creature's bowl-shaped head and webbed hands, insisting it was definitely polite enough not to steal anything. This makes you laugh inside because of all the supernatural beings in folklore. Kappa are notoriously rude. Historians still argue whether beliefs in such creatures served as moral warnings for children or explanations for real dangers near rivers. Either way, in this village, everyone treats folklore like weather forecasts, part practical, part superstition, all taken seriously enough. You make your way toward the small market area, a loose cluster of stalls and mats laid on the ground. A few merchants wave politely, some nodding with recognition. You set your basket down carefully and greet the cloth trader, a middle-aged woman with a sharp eye for stitching and an even sharper eye for negotiation. She inspects the cloth, running her fingers over the texture. "Good work," she says. "Smooth. Even threads. Your mother's influence?" You smile faintly. "A little." She raises an eyebrow. "More than a little, I think." You trade several pieces of cloth for a small bag of salt, a jar of oil, and a promise that she'll send word if she receives any good indigo dye next month. Indigo is a treasure, rare and expensive. Even the idea of getting some makes your chest flutter. When your errands are finished, you linger a moment longer, just breathing the village atmosphere. There's something soothing about these moments. Nothing glamorous, nothing dramatic, just the quiet hum of daily life unfolding around you. Birds circling overhead, the murmur of neighbours exchanging greetings, the rhythmic tapping of a craftsman working at his bench, the gentle smell of boiled grains drifting from a nearby kitchen. Historians still argue whether village life for women felt more communal or more restrictive. But as you stand here, basket in hand, you feel both truths settling gently around you. Yes, people watch you. Yes, expectations follow you. But there's also comfort in familiarity, in knowing every face, every corner, every rhythm. You head back up the path, climbing slowly, your sandals clicking in a steady beat. The wind rustles your sleeves. A dog trots beside you for half a minute before losing interest. You smile softly to yourself, enjoying the tiny stretch of freedom before home responsibilities reclaim you. When you reach the top of the hill, your house welcomes you back with the warm smell of cooking and the faint sound of your grandmother scolding someone, probably your brother, for doing something gravity-defying. Village life may be small, but it's alive, and for a moment walking its narrow streets felt like stepping into a story bigger than your own. As you step back into the house, sliding the shoji closed with a soft click, you feel the subtle shift from village openness to household tension, the kind that tightens whenever family politics or clan obligations hover in the air. Your mother looks up from sorting vegetables, offering you a grateful nod for returning with the salt and oil. But there's something else in her expression, an undercurrent of thought, a quiet storm gathering beneath calm water. Your father sits at the low table, speaking in a hushed tone with an uncle who arrived while you were in the village. Their voices carry through the paper walls easily, loud enough to hear, quiet enough to pretend you're not listening. You kneel by the kitchen, unpacking your basket, while their words drift in and out like smoke through bamboo. The Takeda family is seeking stronger ties. Land near the river, their eldest son, suitable match, beneficial, and we cannot ignore the opportunity. And just like that, you're reminded, your life isn't lived in isolation. It is knitted, sometimes tangled, into a network of relatives, alliances, traditions, obligations, and unwritten rules. Clan politics doesn't just touch your world, it shapes it, whether you want it to or not. A mainstream historical fact settles into your mind. In feudal Japan, family alliances weren't just social gestures, they were survival strategies. Households formed networks to share resources, support political positions, negotiate disputes, and secure marriage arrangements. Women were often the bridges between families, strengthening ties through marriage, hospitality, or skillful diplomacy. Your grandmother appears beside you quietly, as if conjured by the seriousness of the conversation. She kneels and begins slicing daikon with exaggerated calm, her version of eavesdropping without admitting it. "Keep your ears open," she murmurs, "but keep your face still." You nod slightly. That lesson was practically woven into your upbringing. Your uncle's voice sharpens as he continues. If the Takeda son is as capable as they claim, the match could raise standing for both families. Your father agrees in a slow, deliberate hum, and strengthen our position this harvest season. You inhale the steam rising from the vegetables, letting the earthy scent anchor you. Clan politics always feels distant until suddenly, without warning, it's about you, your future, your life. You're not marrying a person so much as you're marrying a plan. Your brother barrels into the room then, skidding to a stop before colliding with a support beam. He freezes when he spots the grown-ups' serious faces. Your grandmother's eyebrow arches so high it nearly launches off her face. He bows awkwardly and scuttles away, muttering something about checking on a frog. You hide a smile behind your sleeve. Returning to your task, you help your mother arrange ingredients for midday meal. She glances toward the room where your father and uncle sit. Her eyes soften, not with sadness, but with understanding. She's lived this cycle. She knows exactly how quickly family decisions can shift the course of one life. She murmurs quietly, "Your father will do what he thinks is best, not easiest, best." There's comfort in her voice, but also reality. Best, in this era, often means strategically advantageous, not emotionally considerate. You rinse the rice, listening to the grains ticking lightly against the bowl. The rhythm is soothing, steady, predictable, unlike politics, which always feels like a sudden wind-changing direction. A quirky village tidbit surfaces in your mind. People around here believe that if two families argue while rice is cooking, the grains will clump together like sticky alliances, messy, stubborn, impossible to separate cleanly. Some women swear by this superstition and refuse to discuss serious matters during cooking. Your grandmother claims it's nonsense. Your mother secretly avoids those discussions anyway, just in case. As the rice steams, your father and uncle finally join you in the main room. Your father's face is composed, but you can tell he's weighing decisions in that quiet, heavy way of his. Your uncle nods to your mother and says, "We will discuss more tonight." You bow politely as he leaves, shutting the door behind him. When silence settles again, your father meets your gaze. Not sternly, not warmly, just directly. "You have responsibilities beyond this house," he says. "Our family depends on the alliances we uphold." You bow your head slightly. You don't respond. Speaking now would only complicate things. Historians still argue whether women had influence in these negotiations. Subtle suggestions, private conversations, quiet persuasion. Some sources claim women shaped clan decisions behind the scenes. Others insist their involvement was minimal. Looking at your mother, you believe the truth is somewhere in the middle. Influence existed, but it required finesse. Your grandmother suddenly claps her hands loudly, startling you. "Enough talk," she announces with theatrical authority. "The rice will burn if we linger, and clumped rice means clumped arguments." Your father gives her a look of polite disapproval, but her interruption, predictable in its unpredictability, dissolves the moment's tension. You move to set the table, aligning chopsticks, smoothing cloth mats, and adjusting each bowl's placement. As you work, you're painfully aware of the invisible threads that connect this meal to the earlier conversation, to clan networks, to your own uncertain path ahead. When everyone finally sits and begins eating, your family falls into a fragile calm, each person thinking their own thoughts, planning their own next steps. You take a slow sip of tea, letting the warmth settle your chest. Clan politics may shape your life, but your reactions, your quiet observations, your subtle influences, these are threads you still hold. Not many threads, but enough to weave something. Eventually, after the meal, while your father steps outside to speak with a neighbor, and your grandmother disappears to gather herbs that may or may not actually be medicinal, your mother gives you a subtle gesture, just a tilt of her head. That means, get your outer robe. We're going to the samurai household. Your stomach flutters because entering a samurai home isn't like visiting a neighbor. It's stepping into another world, one stitched together by discipline, tradition, and a kind of quiet vigilance that seems to hum beneath the floorboards. It's not necessarily dangerous, but it feels like walking into a place where the air itself has rules. You follow your mother down the path toward the larger house at the center of the village, the home of the local samurai family who oversee this region. Their gate stands taller than any structure around, wooden beams reinforced with iron bands, flanked by 2 stone lanterns whose carved faces look perpetually unimpressed with everything. Your mother smooths her robe, so you do the same. Presentability isn't optional here. The servant woman at the gate bows and leads you inside. Immediately the atmosphere shifts. The silence is thicker, the shadows sharper, the air cooler. Every footstep echoes slightly, not because the halls are empty, but because everything here is intentionally sparse, ordered, and serious. Even the dust seems afraid to misbehave. This is where you feel your posture transform automatically, spine straighter, chin lower, steps measured. Being inside a samurai household has that effect, like entering a temple, where the gods are very disciplined and slightly judgmental. A mainstream historical fact settles over the scene. Samurai families followed strict codes of conduct influenced by Bushido, a mixture of martial values, Confucian ethics, and aesthetic restraint. Even the women, though not warriors in the traditional sense, lived within that framework of formality, loyalty, and ever-present readiness. You and your mother are led to the workroom, where the lady of the house sits supervising several tasks: embroidery, ledger balancing, and overseeing household supplies. She greets your mother with a polite nod. You bow lower, because hierarchy demands proportional angles. Your mother presents the cloth you've brought to exchange, fine, tightly woven fabric the lady of the house requested weeks ago. She inspects it closely, very closely. You swear she can see individual atoms, then she nods. Your household produces good work, she says. Coming from her, that's like receiving a gold medal. While the adults speak, you glance around the room. On the wall hangs a beautifully lacquered sword, your first reminder that this household lives with 1 foot in peace and 1 foot in readiness. Near it sits a wooden stand, displaying a tanto, a short blade traditionally kept by samurai women for self-defense and, in grim circumstances, ritual suicide. You try not to stare too long, but the sight of it sends a shiver down your spine. There's a quirky tidbit about samurai women people rarely mention. Many of them trained in naginata, a long-bladed polearm considered ideal for defending the household. You spot one mounted neatly on the far wall, its polished shaft gleaming softly. You imagine the lady of the house practicing in the courtyard at dawn, sleeves tied back, face composed, stance strong. It's both intimidating and oddly inspiring. You lower your eyes again, remembering where you are. No wandering thoughts, no dreamy gazes. Focus. The lady of the house invites your mother to sit. You kneel beside her, quietly observing. The conversation flows politely. Updates about seasonal work, local news, the condition of the roads, but underneath it is an invisible language of politics, courtesy, and subtle negotiation. Even here, in this room full of embroidered cushions and scrolls, clan dynamics linger like silent spectres. Historians still argue whether women in samurai households held more authority than women in farming communities. Some say they had stronger voices because they managed servants and resources. Others say their duties were equally restrictive, just dressed in finer clothing. Watching the lady of the house now, poised and commanding yet still bound by tradition, you suspect the truth again lies in the balance. After a while, a young girl, about 8 years old, enters carrying a small tray of tea. She's dressed neatly, sleeves tied back to avoid spills. She moves carefully, but her eyes dart around with the curiosity only children can still get away with. When she kneels to serve you tea, her tiny hands tremble slightly. You offer her an encouraging smile. She lowers her gaze quickly, remembering etiquette, but the corners of her mouth twitch, just a little. A spark of childhood peeking out from behind the layers of discipline. Tea is poured, bows are exchanged, formalities weave in and out like an invisible dance. As you sip the warm, fragrant liquid, your mother and the lady of the house shift to discussing household defences. What to do if bandits roam too close to the fields, how to prepare supplies during tense seasons, how to keep children calm during sudden disruptions. The practical caution under every word reminds you. Samurai homes look serene, but they live in constant awareness of danger. When business concludes, you and your mother bow deeply and take your leave. As you step outside, sunlight floods your vision again, bright and soft after the dim, disciplined interior. You exhale slowly, feeling your shoulders relax. Being inside that house feels like stepping into a world where emotions are carefully folded and stored, like ceremonial garments taken out only when appropriate. As you walk back down the path toward your own home, you glance once over your shoulder at the samurai residence. Strong, calm, guarded. A place where serenity and vigilance coexist in a delicate balance. And for a moment, just a moment, you wonder what your life would have looked like had you been born inside those walls. A life more protected, perhaps, but maybe also more rigid, more watched, more bound. Your own home awaits you, simpler, freer in small ways, more chaotic in others. You step through your gate, sliding the shoji close behind you, and the world returns to its normal rhythm. You've barely stepped back inside when you hear raised voices. Nothing explosive, just the kind of tense murmuring that tells you something isn't going as smoothly as everyone would prefer. You catch the familiar rhythm of your grandmother's scolding, your brother's defensive whining, and your mother's patient sigh layered underneath. Ah, yes. Harmony, feudal Japan style. You You slip off your sandals and move quietly, placing them just so, aligned, tidy, no toes sticking out like rebellious soldiers. Then you slide open the inner door and find your brother sitting cross-legged on the floor, arms folded, cheeks puffed in righteous indignation. Your grandmother stands over him with her hands on her hips, radiating the calm fury of someone whose patience has been tested thoroughly before lunch. "What happened?" you ask gently. Your brother points dramatically at a broken wooden ladle. "It attacked me," your grandmother huffs. "He was swinging it like a sword." "Ah, that tracks." You kneel down, trying not to smile. "You know the rules. Kitchen tools are not weapons." "They could be," he mutters. And that right there is why you have to stay vigilant. The combination of youthful imagination and household objects is essentially a small-scale natural disaster. You pick up the ladle, inspecting the break. It's fixable. Your father could repair it tonight. Your grandmother nods approvingly, her irritation diffusing slightly as you take responsibility for the situation. This moment, simple as it seems, highlights a mainstream historical reality. Women in feudal Japan often mediated conflicts, within families, between neighbors, even between children and spirits, depending on who you ask. They were the household diplomats smoothing over tensions before they grew into something larger. Keeping harmony wasn't just polite, it was essential. You guide your brother outside for fresh air before he can escalate into another wooden utensil rebellion. He drags his feet dramatically, looking like a tiny convict being escorted to exile. "Why do I always get in trouble?" he groans. You raise an eyebrow. "Do you want the list alphabetically or chronologically?" A slow grin spreads across his face, conflict diffused. "Well done, household diplomat. But not all conflict is this easy to handle. As the two of you walk toward the storage shed, you overhear a few neighbors in low conversation by the fence. Their voices carry through the breeze. "Heard bandits were spotted near the forest road. Last season they raided a storehouse. Our patrols aren't enough." Your stomach tightens. Bandits aren't daily occurrences, but the threat is real enough to live in everyone's mind. A village without walls is vulnerable. A home without warriors even more so. You guide your brother inside the shed and distract him with a small task, organizing charcoal bundles while you listen carefully. The adults' voices fade as they walk away, but the unease lingers. Bandits, unpredictable, desperate, dangerous. Your mother later confirms what you overheard. As she folds a robe, she speaks in a lowered tone. "They rarely come into the village," she says, "but we must always stay prepared." Prepared. That word again. It seems like everything in life here. Routine, etiquette, rituals, even silence is a form of preparation. A readiness for conflict or misfortune or the unexpected. A quirky local belief pops into your mind. Some villagers say that hanging a small gourd above the doorway wards off ill-intentioned visitors. The hollow shape confuses evil spirits, they claim, trapping them inside. Your grandmother has 3 gourds hanging. She calls it being thorough. Later, your father returns home with a serious expression. "We'll reinforce the shed doors tonight," he announces, "just in case." His tone is calm, but you can tell he's replaying possibilities in his mind, calculating risks, household strengths, potential weak points. Historians still argue whether rural communities genuinely feared constant attack, or whether the fear itself was magnified by folklore and seasonal scarcity. But the concern in your father's posture, in your mother's careful tone, in your grandmother's muttering as she checks the door latch twice, it's real. In the afternoon, you help gather tools left outside. Your sleeves catch on a bamboo pole, making you stumble. You regain your footing quickly, hoping no one saw, because nothing sparks household tension like a clumsy moment witnessed by your grandmother. Later still, you help your mother bring in the laundry. The sky's beginning to blush with late-day light when you notice movement at the edge of the field. Just a lone traveller passing by, but your pulse jumps anyway. Being on alert becomes second nature when danger floats through conversations like drifting ash. As evening settles, your father sits sharpening a small knife used for food prep. The soft shh of the blade on stone echoes through the quiet house. Not a threat, a reassurance, a ritual of preparedness. You sweep the floor one last time. Cleanliness helps calm nerves, your grandmother insists, and close the shutters early. Your brother lingers at the doorway, peering out into the growing dusk. "Will bandits come tonight?" he whispers. You shake your head gently. "No, we're careful, and you're safe." He nods slowly, believing you fully, because children trust simple answers even when the world is anything but simple. And as you guide him inside, you realize something profound and quietly powerful. Even in a world shaped by conflict and uncertainty, women hold the threads that steady the household, keeping people calm, fed, warm, and grounded. Not warriors in the traditional sense, perhaps, but warriors of daily life. The kind who fight storms with steady hands and unwavering routine. The next morning, before the house is fully stirred, you step outside and breathe in the cool air, crisp, clean, and tinged with the faint smoke of early cooking fires beginning across the village. It's a quiet moment, but not empty. In feudal Japan, the world is full of unseen presences, and mornings are when you feel them most. Today, as you sweep the entry path, you sense the soft hush of the spiritual world around you. Subtle, steady, woven into daily life as closely as any thread in your kimono. Your mother joins you soon after, carrying a small tray with incense and a cup of water. It's time to tend the household altar. The task alternates between you and her, though she often insists you take over so you learn correctly, which is grandmother speak for ensuring you don't forget the ancestors when you eventually move into another home. You kneel, straighten your sleeves, and light a thin stick of incense. The flame flickers briefly before settling into a glowing ember. White smoke spirals upward, slow, graceful, curling like a silent message drifting toward people you've never met but are expected to honor. You place the incense in the small ceramic holder, bow your head, and murmur a short prayer. A mainstream historical fact threads into your thoughts. Ancestor worship was central to Japanese spiritual life long before Buddhism arrived, and even after multiple religions blended, honoring the dead remained a vital household ritual. It wasn't optional, it was identity. Your grandmother appears behind you, nodding approvingly as the incense burns evenly. "A good morning," she says. "The spirits like steadiness." You resist the urge to ask if the spirits also like breakfast, because joking during rituals is not advisable. Not unless you want to broom gently, but firmly thrown in your direction. Once the altar is tended, you help your mother carry offerings to the nearby shrine. It's not far, just past the garden, beside a tall cedar that whispers in the wind, as though the tree itself is ancient enough to understand every prayer ever offered beneath it. The shrine is simple, a wooden structure, gently worn, with a small rope hung across its entrance and white paper strips fluttering from it. The shide, those zigzag strips, symbolize purification. Your grandmother always says they also ward off wandering spirits with bad manners, but that's one of her personal edits of official tradition. You step inside, bow, clap twice, and bow again. The rhythm feels as natural as breathing. A small offering of rice sits at the base of the shrine idol. Today it's your task to replace it. You place the fresh handful gently, smoothing it with your fingers. "Careful," your grandmother whispers behind you. Messy rice invites messy luck. You nod and take the advice seriously because, honestly, messy anything brings judgment. Not from spirits, but from neighbors. As you turn to leave, something catches your eye. A small omamori charm tied to one of the railings. Dark blue cloth pouch, embroidered with gold thread. Someone placed it there recently. Protection, peace, safe childbirth. You can't tell from this distance. People leave charms for all sorts of reasons. A quirky tidbit dances through your memory. Some villagers believe that if a fox spirit, kitsune, becomes fond of you, it might leave small offerings, berries, feathers, or oddly arranged stones to show approval. Your grandmother insists fox spirits are troublemakers disguised as cute animals, but your mother says they simply mimic the kindness they see. You like her version better. Later, on your walk through the village, you spot a monk visiting from a distant temple. His sandals are dusty, robes tied neatly, expression soft with the calm that comes from walking more miles than you ever will. He stops to speak with a few villagers, offering blessings, answering questions. When he bows to you in greeting, you return the gesture with both hands clasped politely. He smiles. "You have a peaceful presence," he says. Your grandmother, who has appeared behind you like a stealthy shadow, snorts. She has a loud presence when she thinks no one is listening. The monk laughs gently. You bow deeper to hide your embarrassment. Historians still argue whether Buddhism's influence on women in rural areas expanded their emotional support networks or layered new expectations onto old traditions. Standing here, watching the monk distribute charms while your grandmother lectures him about fox spirits, you suspect both are true. Religion gives people comfort, and also a whole set of rules to add to the ones they already follow. By midday, preparations for a small seasonal ceremony begin. Villagers gather near the shrine, placing decorations and arranging offerings. You help weave a rope of dried grass and fresh flowers, the scent sweet and earthy. Your friend Aiko joins you, bumping your shoulder lightly. Your knots are too tight, she teases. You tie ropes like you're preparing for a storm. You never know, you say. A storm might appreciate the effort. Aiko laughs, bright and contagious. Maybe if we tie enough ropes, we can keep gossip spirits away for a week. You grin. Now that would be a miracle. As the ceremony starts, the priest chants softly, smoke drifting from the incense toward the canopy of trees. You stand beside your mother, hands folded, letting the chants wash over you. People bow, clap, whisper prayers. Children watch butterflies. Elders exchange meaningful nods. Even your brother is surprisingly still, mesmerized by a passing dragonfly. This moment, soft, communal, steady, reminds you that spirituality here isn't just religion. It's rhythm, it's community. It's an invisible thread woven through your days, your relationships, your hopes. As the ceremony ends, you leave the shrine feeling lighter, like someone smoothed the creases in your inner world. The air feels warmer, the forest feels friendlier, the household feels slightly less demanding. You head home, sleeves fluttering softly, carrying with you the lingering scent of incense and the quiet reassurance of ancient rituals. You return home from the shrine still carrying that soft inner warmth from the ceremony, but the moment your brother bursts through the doorway waving a stick like it's a sacred festival banner, you remember what day it is. The village is preparing for a small seasonal festival tonight, a welcome interruption to the steady rhythm of chores, hierarchy, and carefully measured politeness. Festivals in feudal Japan weren't just entertainment. They were release valves, tiny cracks where joy, colour, noise, and community could spill through. Your mother gives you a quick smile. "We should help with preparations," she says, already gathering baskets. "And you," she points at your brother, "no swinging sticks at people unless they specifically ask for it." Your brother immediately deflates. But what if they look like they want it? Your grandmother shoots him, the look. You know that look, the one that can stop mischief from developing a heartbeat. He nods quickly, surrendering his imaginary stick license for the day. You and your mother carry baskets toward the village centre. The path is busier now, children racing past with festival energy, neighbours tying decorations onto fences, a few men setting up lantern posts. You help string paper ornaments along the main walkway, careful not to tear the delicate folds. Each ornament is shaped like a tiny fan or crane, fluttering gently in the breeze. A mainstream historical fact slides into place. Festivals, matsuri, were essential in agricultural communities, not just for entertainment, but for honouring deities, marking seasonal transitions, praying for good harvests, and strengthening social ties. Even small local festivals held enormous cultural weight. The atmosphere shifts as you reach the village centre. It's brighter, more alive. Someone is already heating sweet rice cakes on a small brazier. A group of musicians sits under a tree practicing their drums and flutes. Their clumsy warm-up rhythms sound like a confused goose parade. But the effort is charming. Your friend Iko finds you almost instantly. "You came. Good. I need you." You raise an eyebrow. "For what?" She hands you a tangled string of bells. "Untangle this. I lost patience." You take it, assess the knot, and mutter, "This is elaborate." She grins. "Yes, but you're calm and methodical," you snort. "Since when?" "Since yesterday, when you didn't yell at the chicken that stole your rice ball." "That was self-control," you say. "Barely." You work on the bells while Aiko strings lanterns overhead, humming a cheerful tune. People move around you in a joyful kind of chaos. Even your grandmother shows up, lecturing a group of teenagers on proper lantern height, while simultaneously placing her own lantern visibly lower than everyone else's. The sun dips lower, turning the sky peach and gold. With it comes the final wave of preparation, laying mats for seating, arranging food on low tables, lighting the first round of lanterns. Flames flicker inside paper globes, glowing like warm fireflies suspended in the dusk. Children play a game near the shrine, tossing small beanbags at a target painted with a big grinning oni, demon. Your brother tosses his beanbag, misses by 3 feet, and blames the wind. There is no wind. You decide not to comment. A quirky festival tidbit comes to mind. Some older villagers insist that if you spill even 1 grain of festival rice on this night, a mischievous household spirit will visit and rearrange your belongings while you sleep. Not steal, just rearrange. Honestly, the idea of waking to find all your wooden bowls stacked upside down is more annoying than frightening, so you handle your rice with great care. As twilight settles, everyone gathers for the first dance. You're pulled gently into the circle, half participation, half peer pressure, fully expected. The dance is simple: slow steps, small turns, graceful hand movements. Even your grandmother joins, arms raised with the confidence of someone who has performed this dance for 40 years and would critique your foot placement if you so much as blink wrong. The music begins, soft flute notes drifting upward, drums keeping a steady heartbeat rhythm. You step, turn, breathe, follow the pattern. The lantern light casts warm halos on the ground. Shadows of arms and sleeves flow across the earth like living brush strokes. This is one of those rare moments where duty and joy intertwine. Ritual, but also fun. Even with the rules, the formality, the expectations, festivals feel lighter. Like everyone in the village collectively loosens a knot inside themselves. Historians still argue about the exact origins of some village festivals, whether they came from Shinto rituals, agricultural celebrations, or blending of local folklore. But standing here, moving with the rhythm of people you've known your entire life, you realize the origins don't matter as much as the feeling. The way festivals stitch community into something warm and whole. After dancing, you sit with Aiko and share sweet rice cakes, their warm, gooey centers melting in your mouth. You laugh together about a boy who tripped mid-spin, nearly taking down half the dance circle like a comedic domino. You chat about chores, gossip, and dreams you barely admit you have. At one point, a lantern flickers overhead. Aiko nudges you. "Make a wish," she whispers. "On a lantern?" "Why not? My grandmother says they carry wishes up to the sky." You smile. "What's your wish?" She leans in. "That next year's festival has more rice cakes." You laugh so loudly your grandmother turns to shush you. You bow apologetically, still grinning. As the night deepens, laughter fills the air. Children race with sparklers. Someone plays a folk song off-key. Lanterns sway gently, painting the world gold. You inhale deeply. Warm smoke, sweet rice, cedar wood, and the soft music of people simply enjoying being alive. For a moment, all the pressures, marriage, chores, politics, expectations, fade into the background. Just a breath, just a dance, just a simple, fleeting joy. And in this world, fleeting joys matter more than you realize. The morning after the festival arrives more slowly than usual. You feel it in your shoulders, in the soft heaviness of your steps, in the faint echo of drums still lingering somewhere in your head. Festivals give joy, but they also steal sleep, and feudal Japan does not offer recovery days. The sun rises, and so must you. Your grandmother is already awake, naturally, with the energy of someone who either slept perfectly or is powered entirely by criticism and herbal tea. She hands you a small bundle of wilted leaves. "For the stomach," she says. "You ate too many sweets." You open your mouth to protest, but honestly, she has a point. So you bow, accept your fate, and nibble the bitter leaves that taste like punishment in plant form. This morning's task involves checking the family's small supply of medicinal herbs, because festivals or not, chores wait for no one. You step into the storage room where bundles of dried plants hang from the beams like upside-down brooms. Some smell floral and pleasant, others smell like something a fox would refuse to step on. A mainstream historical fact surfaces. Indigenous medicine in feudal Japan came from a blend of folk practices, imported Chinese remedies, and generations of trial and error. Mothers, grandmothers, and midwives carried enormous practical knowledge, sometimes more than formal healers, covering everything from digestive teas to treatments for burns or fevers. Your mother joins you, unraveling a bundle of roots and laying them on a low table. We need to sort these, she says, some for cooking, some for remedies, some for keeping pests away. You separate them carefully, but halfway through you pause to squint at one oddly twisted root. What is this? Your mother smiles. That? A charm root. Your grandmother swears it keeps away nightmares. You laugh. Does it work? Depends on whether you believe in it. Ah, a perfect answer for most things in this era. As you sort the herbs, your mind drifts to the village healer, the woman everyone visits for unusual illnesses, midwifery and spiritual cleansing. She's a respected figure, though occasionally whispered about because her knowledge seems too precise. You've seen her crush herbs with hands steady as stone, diagnose fevers just by touching someone's forehead, and recite chants that sound older than the village itself. But here's a quirky detail you once heard. She claims that if a person has recurring nightmares, it's because their spirit is wandering too far during sleep. Her remedy? A small charm filled with dried plum blossoms tied to the person's pillow. The blossoms give the spirit something pleasant to smell, she said once, so it returns home faster. Your grandmother scoffed, calling it superstition, then tied a plum blossom charm to your brother's pillow anyway, just in case. Sorting herbs soon leads into preparing remedies. You grind dried ginger with your mortar, listening to the rhythmic scrape, scrape, scrape. You mix powders. You help refill little packets tied with string. Despite the labour, there's something soothing about the process, like weaving order back into the world. Historians still argue whether early Japanese medicine leaned more on scientific observation or spiritual interpretation. The truth, as you handle these herbs, is clearly both. Remedies treat the body. Rituals treat the fears. Together they keep people steady. Later, you accompany your mother to deliver a small medicinal bundle to an elderly neighbour recovering from a cough. She greets you warmly, but immediately launches into warnings about winter demons that sneak into people's lungs. You nod respectfully, knowing better than to dismiss folklore outright, especially when you still hesitate to sleep with your foot hanging off the mat just in case something tugs it. On your way home, you stop by the river to wash your hands. The water is cold enough to sting, rippling over smooth stones. A dragonfly lands on your sleeve, gold green, shimmering. You hold still as it flicks its wings rapidly, then lifts off with the effortless grace of a tiny living jewel. You smile, a small, quiet joy. Back home, you refill the water jar and help your grandmother dry bundles of mugwort. She explains, for the 100th time, which herbs should hang in which direction based on whether they're used for medicine or for spiritual protection. You've memorized the information, but she insists repetition is good for the soul, or at least good for preventing you from ruining anything. As the day winds on, you help your mother prepare a small pot of medicinal porridge, millet simmered with herbs, ginger, and a hint of miso. It's simple, but nourishing, the kind of meal people rely on when their bodies feel tired from festival dancing, or nerves from hearing gossip about bandits. Your brother pokes his head in, sniffs the porridge, and wrinkles his nose. You whisper, "It tastes better than it smells." He leans closer, skeptical. "Does it?" You shrug. "Mostly." He sighs. "I miss festival sweets." "Everyone misses festival sweets," your grandmother says behind you. "That's why they're special." Evening comes slowly, soft and golden. You watch the sky change from warm yellow to deepening blue as you hang the last bundle of herbs on the line. The festival's energy is gone, replaced by calm, practicality, and the lingering scent of dried leaves. You rub your palms together, warming them after handling so many cool, brittle plants. Your sleeves sway gently in the breeze. Healing isn't dramatic in your world. It isn't wizardry or miracle cures, it's rhythm, knowledge, and steady hands. It's herbs hung neatly in a row. It's porridge simmering on a low flame. It's your grandmother mumbling about spirits while adjusting bundles by half an inch. It's your mother's quiet voice explaining each step. And it's you, learning the subtle art of tending to both body and spirit in a world full of small dangers and steady routines. You step inside as the lanterns are lit, grateful for the warmth and the gentle glow, another day tending the unseen threads of life. The next morning, you sit beside the small wooden chest where your family keeps writing tools, thread spools, and a few precious books wrapped carefully in cloth. Today your task is different. Not spinning, not weeding, not tending the fire. Today you're focused on learning, or at least the version of learning permitted and expected for a woman in your world. Your mother kneels beside you, smoothing a blank sheet of paper with delicate hands. "Steady strokes," she says. "Calm mind, slow breathing." You nod. You've heard this many times. Calligraphy isn't just writing, it's discipline in ink form. You dip the brush into the inky black fluid, lift it slowly, and guide the tip toward the page. The first stroke is too long, the second too faint, the third just right. 3 strokes in, and already your grandmother is leaning over your shoulder like a very stern cloud. "Don't grip so tightly," she advises, tapping your knuckles. "You're not fighting the brush, you're guiding it." A mainstream historical fact slips in. Girls in feudal Japan often learned reading, writing, sewing, household management, and etiquette from their mothers or local tutors. Literacy varied widely by class. Samurai and merchant families prioritized it more, while farming families treated it as useful but not essential. Still, most girls learned enough to read simple texts, keep household records, and write letters. You practice kanji your mother selected, characters for home, water, quiet, and perseverance. The ink spreads slightly on the paper, softening the edges like morning mist on the river. Your grandmother nods approvingly at perseverance. Less so at quiet, which she claims looks like it was drawn by someone thinking about lunch. After practice, your mother takes out a small cloth-wrapped booklet. It's a collection of short poems, old, cherished, recited generation after generation. She reads aloud, her voice warm and steady. A haiku about cicadas, a tanka about watching plum blossoms fall. Poetry in this world isn't just beauty, it's reflection, discipline, emotional training. Your mother pauses occasionally to explain metaphors or imagery, weaving tiny threads of philosophy into your morning. Your brother wanders in, listening for a minute before declaring, "This poem is about bugs." Your grandmother sighs. "It is about the nature of impermanence, not bugs." "Imperma what?" "Go help your father." He flees before she can elaborate. After lessons, you shift into more practical learning. Your mother hands you a needle and a torn sleeve. "Patch this," she says. "Clean seams, even stitches." Sewing is second nature to you by now, but your mother makes you repeat the same motions again and again until the fabric looks untouched. She watches, correcting angles, adjusting your grip, teaching patience one tiny motion at a time. A quirky detail surfaces. Some women stitched protective symbols into the hidden seams of clothing, tiny knots believed to guard loved ones against accidents or illness. You've seen your grandmother do this with your brother's robe. When asked, she claimed it was just superstition, but she stitched them anyway. Today, as your needle moves through the fabric, you consider adding a tiny protective knot. Not for luck, but for reassurance. Later, your mother teaches you how to arrange ledgers, the small household records tracking rice portions, oil jars, thread supplies, and debts owed or paid. You copy numbers carefully, watching the columns grow. Household management is its own form of literacy, quiet, powerful, often invisible. Historians still argue whether women held more influence in household finances than men. Some evidence suggests they managed daily resources entirely. Others claim men oversaw major decisions, while women handled minutiae. But as you sit here, writing down exactly how much rice is left for tomorrow's meal, it's obvious. Whoever manages the details manages the household. After ledgers, your grandmother takes over your education. She calls it refinement lessons, which is her gentle way of saying, training you to not embarrass the family. You practice bowing, length, speed, angle, hand placement. You practice folding cloth napkins into proper shapes. You practice pouring tea without dripping a single drop, because even one stray droplet is considered sloppy. You practice walking with a book balanced on your head, which feels less like etiquette and more like comedic training, but you comply anyway. And then there is the lesson every girl learns sooner or later. Reading people. Your grandmother sits across from you, hands folded, face expressionless. "Tell me what I'm thinking," you blink. "About tea? No. About the bandits? No. About my posture?" She nods emphatically. "Yes, fix it." You straighten immediately. People reading is an art. Observing micro-expressions, tone shifts, posture changes. Understanding when someone is annoyed, tired, hiding something, or silently begging not to be bothered. These skills aren't taught explicitly. They're absorbed through osmosis, repetition, and survival instincts. In the afternoon, you join your mother in preparing a simple meal. She teaches you cutting techniques, how to slice daikon thinly enough to show elegance, but not so thin you risk cutting your fingers. You learn how to time boiling water so flavors don't vanish. You learn seasoning ratios, stir patterns, and how to adjust flavors subtly. And your mother shares another gentle truth. A well-run home is its own form of education. You nod. You felt it yourself, how every task teaches patience, precision, care. As evening falls, you sit near the window with your small poem booklet, copying a verse by lantern light. The faint scratch of the brush is almost meditative. Still pond at twilight, a single crane stands waiting. Moonlight on its wings. You read it twice, letting the imagery settle into your mind like soft ripples. Education in your world isn't about ambition or titles. It's about becoming steady, capable, adaptable. It's about carrying culture forward through ink, cloth, gesture, and memory. And as the lantern flickers beside you, you feel yourself growing into these skills, one quiet lesson at a time. By the time the next morning unfolds, the house feels unusually calm, not quiet. Your brother is already outside trying to stack rocks into what he confidently calls a castle, but calm in that gentle, rare way where no one is scolding, debating, or anxiously preparing for something. It's one of those rare stretches where the day feels soft around the edges, and it's in these softer moments that relationships, love, friendship, and the little secrets tucked between them tend to bloom. You begin the day tending the fire, stirring the embers until they glow warm and steady. Your mother joins you with tea, sitting beside you on the floor, while the morning light pools against the shoji screens. For a moment, the two of you simply enjoy the stillness. "You've grown thoughtful lately," she says without looking at you. You sip your tea slowly, trying to mask your surprise. "Have I?" She smiles. A mother notices these things. You shrug lightly. Maybe it's the looming talk of marriage. Maybe it's just growing older. Maybe it's realizing you have more feelings than rules allow you to express. In a world where expectations are rigid, emotions become soft rebellions. A mainstream historical fact slips into your mind. Women in feudal Japan had limited space for romantic expression. Love wasn't the foundation of marriage. It was something that sometimes grew later, quietly, or sometimes didn't grow at all. But friendships, those were essential lifelines. Women shared secrets, support, humor, sorrows, and the occasional gossip, forming webs of emotional connection that let them breathe inside strict lives. Your friend Iko arrives mid-morning with a basket of plums, her smile bright as ever. She plops down beside you without ceremony, nearly crushing your sewing tools. "You're free today?" she asks. "Mostly." "Good. I brought something." She rummages in her basket and pulls out a tiny folded paper shape, a crane with delicate ink designs on its wings. You take it gently. "It's beautiful," she beams. "I stayed up late making it. Don't tell my mother. She thinks I was studying poetry." You laugh softly, tucking the crane into your sleeve. Aiko is one of those people who manages to weave mischief into elegance. She leans closer, lowering her voice. "So, did you hear? The Takeda boy might be visiting next month." You stiffen slightly but try to appear casual. "My family hasn't said anything definite." Aiko raises an eyebrow with theatrical skepticism. "Your grandmother was lecturing my mother about marital virtues yesterday. Something must be happening." You groan softly. She laughs. She nudges your arm gently. "Don't worry. If he's terrible, I'll sneak you out during the ceremony." Your eyes widen. "Aiko!" She shrugs. "What? I'm quick. You're reasonably quick. We can disappear into the mountains." You laugh so loudly your grandmother shushes you from 3 rooms away. Iko grins triumphantly. Later, as you gather vegetables from the garden, you think about love. Not romantic love necessarily, but affection, loyalty, bonds that form between people in small moments. Like your mother remembering exactly how you like your tea. Like your brother leaving a plum on your mat, probably stolen. Like Aiko folding a tiny crane with your favourite flower inked onto its wings. Love lives in gestures here, not declarations. There was once a story your grandmother told, a fringe tale, half folklore, half warning, about a young woman who used coded stitching to communicate secret feelings to another woman in her village. Supposedly, the stitches represented seasons, emotions, promises. Some say the story is fictional. Others claim it was based on a real pair of close friends whose bond survived marriages, separations, and years of silence. Historians still argue whether such tales point to hidden forms of expression or simply moral lessons dressed up as romance. But you've always adored the story. Because in a world shaped by duty, the idea of private emotional language feels quietly revolutionary. After lunch, you help repair a broken basket near the storage shed. A soft breeze rustles your sleeves and you hear footsteps approaching. When you glance up, you see someone from the village, Takeshi, a young man who helps his father with lumber work. He stops a few steps away, holding a wooden bucket. "Your father asked me to bring this," he says, bowing politely. You bow back. Takeshi is polite, quiet, and awkward, in the way that makes everyone under 20 whisper about him being mysteriously interesting. His sleeves are rolled slightly, and sawdust clings to the edges of his robe. He hesitates before handing you the bucket, like he's trying to decide whether to speak. Finally, he says, "Your embroidery for the samurai house was praised yesterday. Your cheeks warm. Oh, I'm glad." "You're skilled," he says softly. You bow again because that's all etiquette allows. He bows once more and turns toward the gate. Halfway to the path, he pauses, glancing back briefly. Then he leaves. You stand there holding the bucket, heart beating faster than the situation deserves. Aiko materializes beside you instantly, nearly making you drop it. "I saw that," she whispers aggressively. You glare. "Please don't start," she grins. Too late. Consider it started. You try to refocus on the basket repair, but your thoughts flit between the quiet compliment, Aiko's teasing smile, and the cool breeze brushing your cheek. Affection in this world isn't always a grand declaration. It's the gentle slope of a smile, the hesitation before offering a bucket, the quiet tone of someone who admires you, but probably doesn't know what to do with the feeling. As the day ends, you sit by the small window, sorting your sewing tools, letting the warm glow of the lantern fill the room. Your folded crane sits tucked beside you. You trace its wings lightly. Love, friendship, secrets. They're woven through your days like hidden threads. Soft, subtle, but strong enough to pull you gently toward tomorrow. The morning begins with a chill sharper than usual, the kind that nips at your ears and makes you wrap your outer robe a little tighter. You step outside to sweep the walkway, your breath puffing like tiny clouds, and as you do, a messenger from a nearby village trots past the gate. His sandals are dusted from long travel, and he carries a small satchel strapped tightly across his chest. Your father meets him at the gate. There's a brief exchange, quiet, formal, with 2 bows and a murmured thank you. When your father walks back inside, he holds a letter sealed with a tiny wax mark. Letters don't arrive often. When they do, something shifts in the household. Your mother opens the letter with careful fingers. You and your grandmother linger nearby, pretending to tidy baskets even though you're clearly listening. "It's from my cousin," your mother says finally. "She invites us to visit next week, just a short journey." Your grandmother brightens visibly, rare enthusiasm. "We should go. It's been too long since we visited family outside this valley." And then she adds, with an unmistakably pointed glance at you, "A young woman should see the world." Ah, of course, seeing the world, within the boundaries approved by elders. Still, your pulse quickens, a journey beyond the village, beyond the same paths, beyond the same routines. Even if it's brief, even if strict etiquette wraps around the experience like a second kimono, it's something new. A mainstream historical fact comes to mind. Travel in feudal Japan was regulated and often required official permission. Commoners typically stayed close to home, unless visiting relatives, attending festivals, or traveling as part of work. Roads could be unpredictable. Weather, bandits, toll checkpoints, and political boundaries turned even short trips into carefully planned endeavors. Your father nods after reading the letter. "We can go. It's safe enough before the rainy season." You hide your smile, but your mother sees it anyway. She squeezes your hand. Preparation begins immediately, because travel means layers of planning, food to pack, clothing to mend, offerings to bring, tools to carry, and naturally a lecture from your grandmother about walking with dignity, even on unfamiliar roads. You spend the afternoon helping repair sandal straps and checking travel pouches. Your brother insists he's coming too until your grandmother announces, "No, you would wander off, befriend a snake, and bring it home." "I wouldn't," he protests. You absolutely would, you say. He pauses. Maybe. When the day of travel arrives, dawn paints the sky a gentle apricot. You dress in your sturdier clothing, still graceful, but simpler, with a sash tied tightly so your sleeves won't catch on branches or wagon edges. You tuck water flasks into baskets. Your mother hands you a small pouch of dried plums for energy. Your grandmother tucks an herb charm into your sleeve to keep reckless spirits away. Your father leads the way down the village path. Aiko meets you briefly to say goodbye, handing you another folded paper crane for good luck. You promise to return with stories, maybe even something new you've never seen before. Soon you're on the open road, a narrow dirt path cutting through rolling fields. The wind carries the scent of distant pine forests. Birds call from the treetops. Your sandals thump rhythmically against the earth. The world feels wider, brighter. For the first hour, you mostly listen to your grandmother lecture about posture, again, safe walking pace, and avoiding suspicious leaves, whatever that means. But eventually she grows quiet, awed by the soft panorama of hills and distant streams. It's strange. Travel makes even familiar trees look different. The branches seem taller, the colours sharper. Maybe it's the excitement humming in your chest. Maybe it's the absence of chores for a few hours. Maybe it's simply breathing air that didn't come through your usual paper screens. Midway through the journey, your mother points out a small roadside shrine, a simple wooden structure with a stone fox statue beside it. Offerings sit in a tiny bowl, rice grains, a few coins, a dried flower. You stop to bow and leave a pinch of rice. Your grandmother adjusts the offering bowl slightly and mutters, "Someone placed this crooked. Spirits dislike crooked bowls." A quirky tidbit surfaces. Travellers sometimes left little wooden plaques, ime, with wishes carved or written on them. Some ask for safe journeys, others for rain, others for romance. Your grandmother once claimed that a fox spirit stole her Emma years ago because it was too honest. No one knows what that means, and she refuses to elaborate. As you walk further, you pass other travellers, farmers pushing carts, a merchant with jingling packs, a pair of monks reciting softly. Everyone bows politely as they pass. Road etiquette is strict, but there's a quiet camaraderie in it, a recognition that travel binds people together in shared vulnerability. Historians still argue whether travel empowered women by exposing them to wider communities, or simply extended the burden of etiquette to new locations. Watching your grandmother adjust her posture, every time strangers pass, you suspect both. Around midday, you rest beside a river. You wash your hands in the cold, clear water. Sunlight dances on the surface like tiny coins. Your mother spreads out a small meal. Rice balls wrapped in leaves, dried fish, and a few plums. Simple food tastes better outdoors, especially when paired with the low, steady rush of water. After eating, you lay back briefly on the grass, staring at the sky. Clouds drift like slow caravans. The breeze brushes your face. For the first time in a while, you feel light. Almost free. Your grandmother taps your foot. Don't fall asleep. Spirits might mistake you for someone dreaming too deeply and lure you away. You sit up. That's not a real belief. She sniffs. It is now. The journey continues through forest paths where the sunlight filters in thin beams, through open fields buzzing with insects, across small bridges with wooden planks that creak like old storytellers. You feel each step in your legs, but also in your spirit. It's movement with purpose, with discovery, with a hint of adventure. By late afternoon, your cousin's home appears, a warm wooden structure nestled near a cluster of maple trees. The moment you see your cousin smiling from the doorway, you feel your fatigue melt. You bow deeply, and she pulls you into an embrace. Not the formal kind, but a genuine one, soft and warm. "You made it," she says. "I've been waiting." You step inside, the scent of fresh tatami and boiling tea welcoming you like a friend. Travel wasn't long, it wasn't far, it wasn't dramatic. But in a life lived within boundaries, even a short journey can feel like stepping into a new chapter, one where the world stretches just a little wider, and you stretch with it. Your cousin's home feels warmer and livelier than you remembered, filled with soft chatter, the scent of simmering broth, and the kind of welcome that makes your shoulders drop without realizing how tense they'd been. She ushers you inside with the excitement of someone who's been preparing all morning, pointing out where to place your sandals and offering tea before you can bow twice. Your grandmother and mother settle in easily, catching up on family matters while you take in the little details. The fresh tatami mats, the neatly arranged alcove display, the small basket of persimmons drying near the window. Everything is familiar, yet slightly different, like a version of home painted in warmer colours. Your cousin leads you to the back garden where late-season flowers still cling to life. She kneels beside a tray of teacups. "You've grown," she teases. You laugh. Everyone keeps saying that. Well, it's true. And your sleeve stitching? Beautiful. I saw it as soon as you walked in. You flush slightly. Praise hits harder when it comes from someone who knows exactly how much practice goes into making even a sleeve look elegant. The two of you sip tea while cicadas hum lazily in the trees overhead. A gentle breeze stirs your hair. Your cousin studies your face in that perceptive way she's always had. "You're thinking about the future," she says softly. You stiffen. "Is it obvious?" she smiles. Only to someone who did the same at your age. She tells you stories, some light, some wistful, about her own marriage, her move to this household, the challenges and small joys she found along the way. She doesn't sugarcoat it, but she doesn't darken it either. It feels real, grounded, honest, and comforting. A mainstream historical fact drifts in. Women often gained more respect and authority as they aged, especially once they became mothers or took on larger household responsibilities. Age didn't free them from restrictions, but it shifted their place within the family hierarchy. They moved from being the ones guided to being the ones guiding. Your cousin embodies that shift, calm, confident, still bound by expectations but no longer weighed down by every small misstep. After tea, she walks you through her home, pointing out where repairs were made, where new shelves were added, where her husband stores his tools. She laughs at her own mistakes from years past, accidentally burning rice, tripping over a wash basin, misplacing a bundle of herbs and blaming fox spirits. Growth, she says, is embarrassing before it's admirable. Later, you join your mother and grandmother inside. Your grandmother and cousin's mother are discussing ailments in vivid detail, aging knees, aching backs, and how many steps it takes before a morning feels proper. You think they might be competing over who suffers more, but in a strangely affectionate way. Your mother chats with her cousin's husband about harvest forecasts. You listen quietly, tracing the wood grain on the floor, absorbing the rhythm of older voices shaping the conversation. Growing older in this world is less about freedom and more about shifting purpose. You begin to understand why your grandmother holds her responsibilities like a staff of pride. After lunch, simple vegetables, rice, pickles, and a wonderfully soft egg custard. You help wash the dishes, enjoying the laughter floating around the kitchen. Your cousin hums while drying bowls. "It gets easier," she says lightly. "What does?" "Being yourself while also being who everyone expects." You tilt your head. "Is that possible?" She shrugs. "Sometimes. In pockets. Small ones. But enough." A quirky tidbit comes to mind. Something your grandmother used to say when referring to older women in the village. Age turns women into solid wood. You can carve them, paint them, move them, but they don't break. You used to roll your eyes at that metaphor. Now it feels accurate. In the afternoon, you walk with your cousin to the nearby hilltop where maple trees glow in shades of red and amber. The climb is gentle but steady. Along the way, you see elderly villagers sweeping paths, tending small shrines, chatting softly. Their movements slow, but their presence solid, pillars of the community. When you reach the hilltop, the view opens wide, revealing a stretch of valleys and distant rooftops bathed in golden light. Your cousin sits beside you on a flat rock. "When I was your age," she says, "I worried that life would shrink as I grew older. But I was wrong. It doesn't shrink. It changes shape. And you learn to move in it differently. You turn this over carefully. You imagine yourself older, still managing tasks, still tending to family, still navigating expectations, but perhaps with more confidence, more voice, more quiet authority. Age may bring limits, yes, but also freedom in tiny, subtle forms. Historians still argue whether older women gained significant influence or simply transitioned into new types of labour. Watching your grandmother command respect at home, watching your cousin's mother run the household with serene certainty, watching your cousin grow into her role, You begin to think influence isn't measured by grand gestures, but by how gently people listen when you speak. As the sun begins to lower, your cousin nudges you gently. Come, dinner won't cook itself. You descend the hill, walking slowly. You feel the earth solid beneath your feet. You feel older, not in a burdensome way, but with a newfound understanding of the path ahead. Back at the house, lanterns glow softly. Warm laughter fills the rooms. Your grandmother is telling a story, probably exaggerated, about your brother accidentally scaring a chicken into the river. You join your family, settling into a comfortable spot. Growing older doesn't make life easier, but it does make it richer. More layered. More yours. Even within boundaries, there is space to grow. The journey home from your cousins feels shorter, as return trips often do. The road is familiar now. The curve of the hillside path, the low wooden bridge that creaks at exactly the 7th step, the cluster of tall pines that whisper secrets whenever the wind passes through. By the time your village roofs come into view, your basket is lighter, your sleeves dusty, your feet tired, but your mind is calmer than it's been in weeks. Home smells like rice, cooking and cedar wood, and a faint trace of incense from the morning's altar ritual. Your brother greets you at the gate with a triumphant shout. He's built an even larger castle of rocks while you were gone. It leans at a questionable angle, but you applaud it anyway. Your grandmother nods approvingly when you step inside, though she immediately fusses with your collar, as if the wind rearranged you just to irritate her personally. Life slips quickly back into its familiar rhythm. The fire needs tending, the floor needs sweeping, a robe needs mending. Your mother gives you small tasks as she cooks, and you move through them with a surprising sense of steadiness. Maybe it's because you missed home a little. Maybe it's because seeing your cousin helped you understand where you fit and where you might someday stand. Evening settles quietly around the house, warm and golden. Firelight paints soft patterns on the shoji screens. Someone outside is practicing flute, slow and wandering, but soothing. The kind of sound that makes your thoughts drift like steam from a teacup. You kneel by the low table to organize the sewing tools you brought home. A folded paper crane slips from your sleeve, Aiko's latest creation, and you smile to yourself. Small tokens mean more than people admit. You place it beside your thread spool, a tiny symbol of the bonds you carry with you. Your father enters then, sitting carefully at the table. Your cousin says you've become skillful, he says. You bow your head modestly. I'm learning. He nods, the faintest hint of pride warming his features. Learning is enough. Coming from him, that's practically poetry. Your mother joins you next, placing a cup of warm tea in your hands. The Takeda family sent word, she says gently. Their visit may be postponed. Illness in their household. You exhale, slow, controlled, hoping your relief doesn't show too much. Not because you fear marriage, but because time, more time, is a gift. Your grandmother overhears and declares, postponed means more time to practice etiquette. You try not to groan. After dinner, chores finish earlier than usual. The house sinks into that quiet evening stillness. Soft breaths, crackling fire, distant crickets outside. You step onto the veranda with your tea, sitting just where the lantern light touches your sleeve but not your face. The air is cool, not cold, the kind of coolness that invites reflection rather than discomfort. You breathe deeply, slowly. The night smells of damp earth and autumn leaves. Somewhere in the trees a night bird calls. You glance upward at the moon, a white coin resting in the dark. A mainstream historical fact floats softly through your mind. Women in feudal Japan often found their only moments of solitude after nightfall, when chores slept and expectations quieted. These moments weren't long, but they were precious. Spaces to think, dream, hope, or simply be. You sip your tea and let your thoughts roam freely for the first time today. You think about your childhood, small hands slapping water by the river, chasing dragonflies with your brother, learning to tie your sash without help. You think about the future, its uncertainties, its inevitabilities, its hidden threads you might still learn to tug gently. You think about the people around you, your mother's teachings, your grandmother's fierce care, Iko's laughter, your cousin's calm wisdom. You think about yourself, who you are becoming, who you want to be, within the constraints but also beyond them, in the quiet spaces where choice still exists. A quirky tidbit comes to mind. Your grandmother once said the moon listens best to whispered wishes. It won't grant them, she added, but it keeps them, and sometimes that's enough. So you whisper, not a wish exactly, but a quiet promise to yourself, to stay steady, to keep growing, to hold on to the small joys that soften your days. Historians still argue whether women of the era felt contentment within the roles they occupied or carried silent dreams that history could never record. You suspect the answer is both. People adapt, people dream, people make peace with the world in ways scholars can't always measure. As you finish your tea, your mother steps onto the veranda, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders. She sits beside you without speaking, and the two of you watch the moon together. No expectations, no instructions, no hierarchy, just presence. A slow, gentle warmth fills you from within. Not from the tea, not from the fire, but from the understanding that even in a world shaped by duty and restraint, there is beauty, comfort, quiet strength, and space, however small, to form your own inner life. Your mother touches your arm lightly. You've grown, she whispers again, and this time you believe her. The night deepens. The lantern glows softly. Your breath slows. Your day ends not with exhaustion, but with peace. Let the world soften now. Let the edges of everything you've imagined tonight begin to blur, like ink spreading quietly through warm water. The house around you grows still, the paper walls resting gently in their wooden frames, the fire fading to soft embers that glow like tiny sleeping stars. Even the distant night sounds, the soft murmur of wind, the hush of insects, begin to stretch into longer, slower rhythms. Imagine yourself sitting beneath the gentle lantern light, your sleeves pooled around you, your breath moving in and out with ease. Each inhale pulls in a sense of calm, each exhale releases the weight of the day. You've walked through narrow village paths, tended to quiet rituals, learned, worked, laughed, travelled, and returned home. Now everything slows, everything settles. Feel the way the cool night air brushes softly against your cheek, the way the wooden veranda warms beneath you from the lingering heat of the day, the soft glow of the moon casting a pale ribbon across the floor. Let your thoughts drift the way leaves drift down a still river, unhurried, effortless, peaceful. Nothing asks anything of you now, not chores, not expectations, not traditions or duties or carefully practiced etiquette. This moment belongs only to you, warm and gentle like a small lantern held in steady hands. Let the quiet wrap around you like a soft robe. Let the peaceful rhythm of night settle into your chest. If any lingering thoughts approach, imagine them falling like grains of sand into a still pond, ripples spreading softly then disappearing, leaving only calm behind. You are safe, you are steady, you are home. And as the lantern dims, let your breath deepen, your eyes rest, and your mind drift softly into sleep.